Firefighters know that every second counts during the golden hour. That is why first responders trust AMKUS for simple, rugged, reliable rescue tools.
The opinions, viewpoints, and advice shared in this podcast are solely those of the host, Dave McGlynn, and should not be interpreted as reflecting or endorsed by the Department of the Army or the Department of Defense Fire and Emergency Services.
All right. Welcome to another fire engineering podcast, The Training Officer. I'm your host, Dave McGlynn. It's new year, right? New year, new me, all that stuff. Welcome to 2025, January 2025. We're starting off the year with a special guest who's no stranger to the show. He's been on the show before. He is literally, by definition, what I would consider an actual mentor. And he's a dear friend of mine, older brother to me. So I'm really happy to have him on. And we're going to talk about what he does. Anybody that doesn't know him, you're going to know him by the end of the show, but I'm pretty sure you know him. Dude travels the whole country. He's known to teach a class, take in a rock show, and see a baseball game. That's typically what his legacy is. Everybody knows that. He goes all over the country and does that every time he goes somewhere. And we're going to talk about his new book, Courage Under Fire. So without further ado, Steve Prziborowski, instructor FDIC, author for fire engineering books. Thank you for joining me tonight, brother. I appreciate having you on.
Thank you, brother. You're too kind. I appreciate the invite and the kind words. So good evening or good day, everybody, since who knows when you'll be watching this. But right. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here. And my latest book from Fire Engineering Books and Videos, Courage Under Fire Leadership, is I'll get into that shortly here, but to get a little bit about myself, been in the fire service for almost 34 years. I think very early 90s, started out like many others, explorer firefighter for the city of Alameda, part-time firefighter up in Elk Grove, student firefighter in Oakland, then get hired with Santa Clara County Fire in 1995 and spent 26 and a half years with Santa Clara County Fire Department, which is just on the west side of San Jose, 15-station fire department, about 300 personnel, and spent my time there working as a firefighter for about 5 years, company officer, captain for about 6 years, I think it was, battalion chief for about another 6 years, and then deputy chief for the last 10 years, retiring out as deputy chief of training division. I've always had a passion, not just for the fire service. Since I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a firefighter, but also for helping others, especially in the form of teaching and instructing and so forth. So besides being in the fire service now for over 30 years, I'm still actively involved as a retiree. I think I'm busier now than I was beforehand, like everybody says. But I still teach the college one night a week, the Intro to Fire class for the future firefighters I get to teach that are looking at starting in their career at Chabot College in Hayward. I'm very fortunate to go around the country teaching for fire departments, teaching for other organizations or associations that'll have me, and obviously at FDIC when I get the chance every April. Very blessed and fortunate to be able to do that as well too. So what inspired me to become an instructor is, like I mentioned, when I started out, even before I was hired full-time as a career firefighter, it took me about 4 years to become a full-time firefighter. Now, back in the 90s, there was less applicants for the position. I mean, there was thousands of people for one or two jobs. The competition isn't like that today. I mean, anywhere it seems like it's a lot easier. But anyway, back then you'd have 3,000 people for 3 jobs, applicants for 3 jobs. So when I started out taking my classes at Chabot College, where I still teach, going through EMT, the fire academy, and trying to learn the trade before I got on the job, one of the opportunities that I had to help give back was when I finished EMT class, they asked if I wanted to be a volunteer skills instructor. I'm like, okay, I've just been through EMT. I'll be happy to, because I enjoyed doing that. And I had taught CPR before and basic level stuff, first aid stuff, sort of to build my resume, but to not check the box, but to learn more. Well, the EMT skills instructing turned into, once I finished the academy, being a volunteer skills instructor at our fire academy. When I went through the paramedic program, as I was still testing to become a firefighter, they were looking for skills instructors. And right before Santa Clara County Fire hired me in 1995, I was very fortunate to, I had my EMT, my paramedic, and my firefighter academy. I was able to get a lot of valuable experience that I really started enjoying teaching, not as a full-time career position, but just helping supplement, learn more, and give back. And the old saying, you learn more by doing and teaching others. And I've always enjoyed mentoring others. So I've been almost teaching and instructing as long as I've been in the fire service. And it's just been a passion of mine to help people of all ranks, helping people that are getting hired, like at the college level I mentioned, future firefighters, all people all the way that are going up to fire chief positions. I was just doing a coaching session for someone from a local department that's testing for lieutenant. And so I've always had that passion for helping others get hired, stay hired, get promoted and stay promoted. And I say not get promoted and stay promoted, get promoted or get hired. Those are the somewhat easy parts. But I say stay promoted and stay hired by doing the right thing, leading by example, and all those things that we'll talk about with my book today. So that's been always my passion. Is I'm very grateful and blessed to still be involved in the fire service, just to help mentor others and share whatever words of wisdom I can, at least from my experience. I don't have the answers, but I have some experiences that I think are worth sharing. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, man. No, I love that. I find it very interesting when you said, it's funny, you started teaching kind of super early in, and like you said, like not in early into your career technically, but like prior to even getting full time in Santa Clara County.
Yeah.
Right. It's really cool to hear that, because we've known each other for years, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that you were being an instructor prior to that.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
An interesting note on that is that when I got hired with Santa Clara County Fire, they put us through I think the academy was 12 weeks, 12-week recruit academy, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And my first week, it was the funniest, not funny, but first week in the academy, October or whatever it was, 2nd of 1995. Here I am, 8 o'clock, starting the academy on Monday. And 3 weeks or 4 weeks prior, I was assigned at the college. I was upgraded from part-time volunteer instructor to teaching the EMT refresher program. I eventually went on to teach the EMT program itself, as well as the whole fire program. I ran that for a number of years. But I literally, my first week in the academy, first day, I finished up the recruit academy at 5 o'clock, left it, here in Los Gatos, did the hour drive up to the college, taught EMT refresher till 10, went back, did that for like a couple nights that first couple of weeks. And I'm like, and I was able to make it work because I'd already gone through a fire academy, but people were looking at me going, you were going through the recruit academy as well as teaching class at night? It's like, well, yeah, I'm lucky I was able to do both and not have any detrimental effects, but it just enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, no, it's cool. So when I joined the fire department, within the first year that I joined the fire department, a few of the guys that I went to high school with were either the same age as me or like a year younger, right? But they hadn't joined the fire department. So I started like recruiting them because I wanted my buddies to I'm like, check this thing out. Like, it's so cool, like it's really my thing, but like, I just wanted my buddies to be with me and try to like force my passion onto them. Right. And by necessity, I started teaching them. Back in Jersey, we call it the 10 basic modules of firefighting. And it was mostly all exterior stuff, dressing a hydrant, donning PPE, changing out an SCBA, all this stuff, right? Ground ladders, etc. But when they joined, they were like my students, and I didn't even realize it, but like, I just started to fall in love with teaching other people within the first year of me becoming a firefighter. And then coupled with like you said earlier, like you learn more and you appreciate more about the science, the education, the history, and the purpose of what it is that we're teaching people when you have to teach it. Like I feel like I'm not saying I'm a great firefighter by no means. It's just you master more of what we do when you teach it rather than just applying it, but being actually able to teach it and facilitate it. It's a different type of skill. So it's just really cool to hear that like it was like thrust upon you early on but you do like you fall, it's not a chore. Like you end up falling in love with it,
Well, and I think the part for me, besides falling in love with it, you hit the nail on the head. It should, it doesn't guarantee, but it should force you to up your game. I mean, I've always been a proponent of not teaching things that were not I don't want to say expertise. I mean, we're all, I think, hopefully all struggling experts, meaning we're never reached the plateau. We're always struggling and striving for it. But we obviously have things that we're stronger in than others. And like fire behavior was never one of my strengths. I mean, I learned what I had to do for the fire department to make sure I had a safe foundation, but I was never the chemistry expert and everything else. But anyway, I remember at Santa Clara County Fire, I wanted to get my foot in the door, and I already had my foot in the door as a skills instructor. But then next thing you know, the coordinator of the academy is like, hey, can you teach a 3-hour, you're the classroom instructor? I'm like, yeah, sure. What's the subject? He's like, fire behavior. I'm like, I mean, again, I could do it. But it was like, it forced me. And I told him flat out, I go, okay, I got to be honest with you. As much as I want to take that next step, can't we do something like maybe, I don't know, pulling hose or throwing ladders? And he's like, no, he goes, I think you can do it. I'm like, I'm not going to be the expert. And I'm trying to talk myself out of it because I have faith in you. You're going to learn the crap out of this stuff. You're not going to be the expert. I get it, but you'll be better off. And I'm glad I did it because it forced me to get out of my comfort zone. And I recognize how not so great of an instructor I was. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the students got what they needed out of it, but I learned a lot out of it. And I also learned in the future, there are times where you have to decline an opportunity because it's maybe not your bailiwick, for lack of a better term. Because I've been asked on occasion. I mean, my focus right now, thank God, because of where I've gotten in my career and what I've been able to do. Like when I was a firefighter, I was always passionate about, obviously, the hands-on stuff, but I was also passionate about the leadership stuff, the team building stuff, the promotional preparation stuff. But again, I was a firefighter, so I had zero credibility. And obviously, you can't just be a firefighter talking about necessarily leadership. Not to say you can't and it doesn't happen. There are people that do that, but I figured I had to maybe get the rank before I got the credibility. Well, now having had a chance to move up the ranks, different positions, I think I can at least say and discuss some of those topics with more credibility and respect because I've done those positions. But every now and then I'll get a topic that is like, you know what? Hey, if you want to talk, I'm more than happy to discuss leadership best practices, team building, training stuff, promotional preparation, getting hired stuff. But again, if you want someone to talk about maybe truly HR stuff, not to say I can't talk, I managed HR for a while, but I'm not that attorney per se, like I don't know, whoever else that's out there. There's many great ones out there that, so I think that's the key also is knowing when you need to pass on an assignment just for the sake of not degrading what you're doing or just watering it out.
Kurt Verone and John Murphy.
Yeah,
those are our two resident lawyers. Yeah. Well, yeah. I figured I'd plug them, I mean, like, I'm with you. I am. I have to take a left on the direction of the show. We'll cover the things that we had discussed offline, but it's like even saying them, like, you don't claim to be like a lawyer, like because we have some of those, that's the beauty of, like, I always plug FDIC. It's not just cause it's FDIC, but it's like, it's just like that. Like we have a cadre of SMEs, of SMEs, like John Murphy and Verone. No, but I'm saying, like the other nice thing, like just it was making me think, like it's just something you were saying. So like as an instructor, like when we first teach something, and even the first few times we teach it, like you're not good at it. You're not going to master it, and that's the funny thing is like, you've gone, which I appreciate. Like you've sat in or popped in, and you've even sat through the entire class a few times since I've started, teaching at FDIC. And, I'm not plugging me. I'm saying like I've heard from you and Frank, Richie, because you guys always, you're loyal like that. You guys always just come and pop in and you tell me about like what I grew with, like, oh, pal, like, just amazing to see like what you did this time, and I share that just because as an instructor, like, don't get overwhelmed if, you didn't know the content perfectly or whatever, and you taught a class and it in your mind, it didn't go as well as you think it should have. Right. Because the more you teach it, it's the same as why we teach people. It's repetition, right? The better you're going to get at it. So like you improve on what works as you teach more, you learn more about it, you stay fresh with it. And then if you get that opportunity where you design your own program, you're not just teaching a created PowerPoint slide and lesson plan, but one that you've created yourself, you don't even, it's like you just know your spots, you know what I mean? And it just becomes so natural for you. So I share that because like, I'm just listening to what you're saying. And I'm like, yeah, I've been there. Like you teach a subject, you're like, oh, like I'm not familiar with this one, we'll see how it goes. And then you do it enough and it ends up being like something that you just really mastered through necessity and repetition, and then people are like, wow, you're really the guy for that. You're like, am I? I didn't think it was.
Well, I think, and sometimes we're our own worst enemies, which I think is a good thing because, I mean, it's like taking a oral interview for a promotional exam. Some of my best outcomes when I got promoted, for example, or got hired were the oral interviews I thought I did the worst on because I thought I left things out on. And then it's like, wow, I came out whatever, number one or number two. Didn't think so. And I think that's the same thing that's, I think, helpful for me. And I think for anyone else that's honest is that sometimes when we think that maybe we're not our best, then you hear something from feedback from somebody else. And it's like, okay, maybe I was okay or whatever. And I'm not saying great or whatever else, because I think we should always strive for improving things. But you hit the nail on the head in the sense that we all start out at some point where we maybe have that structured, we got to follow this, whatever the slides are or whatever. And that's good to have. But then you get to that point where it's like, you know what, okay, I know the outline and now I can build upon it, because I think that's where the value comes. It's like at the intro to fire class at the college, I've done that for, I think, 30 years, that class twice a year or every semester. The curriculum, I mean, we changed the curriculum, but it's standard state curriculum, basically, an IFSTA curriculum, and that's fine. And when I started out, I had to make sure I had everything down. But now, as I tell students, my prep time is not rereading the slides because I know them. My prep time is going over current events that I want to bring into class because I want to expand what they're learning. Because we're talking the basics, intro to fire, but I also want to expand about, like, if class was tonight, we'd be talking about the New Orleans tragedy yesterday that happened, because it's a current event that firefighters will be responding to, and not Monday morning quarterbacking it. So, but yeah, you get to the point where it's like there's still prep time, but it is nice when you can get to that point. But again, you work at it. And the unfortunate part is I know a lot of people that get into instructing that just sometimes give up because it's too much work, or maybe they're not confident or comfortable, or maybe it's just not their gig. But I'm just blessed and fortunate that I still enjoy doing what I'm fortunate to do. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. And thank you again for bringing up the New Orleans thing. Yeah, just thoughts and prayers to them. It's very tragic and sad. And then even, I guess, the failed attempt, which is great. Out in Vegas there. Mm-hmm. I saw that too. So let's talk about the book, right? Yeah. So you've written a number of books. I had the fortune of being able to contribute toward one of them. I've been able to read and been a student of stuff that you've put out prior to even getting to know you, which is nice. So your latest with fire engineering is Courage Under Fire Leadership. So to stay consistent in this show, it being a training thing. You having that huge background with training and obviously with leadership, let's plug the book a little bit, right? It's a fire engineering book. It's your book. You're my guest. So for my listeners, how do you think the principles outlined Courage Under Fire Leadership can be applied to firefighter training to help develop leadership skills in individuals at all levels, not just, their rank, but at all levels?
Well, there's a few things you hit that I think are perfect starting points. To me, leadership is about dealing with people. A lot of people think leadership is tied into, collar brass, rank, whatever else. Yes, in the job description of any department, if you are a company officer up to fire chief, leadership is within definitely your job description. Even though a firefighter or driver who's not an officer may not have those words leadership, there's still the expectation to be maybe an informal, let alone a formal leader. So that's my whole focus. And to dive back to the books I've been fortunate to publish, especially this one and then the last one, 101 Tips to Ace Your Promotional Exam that Fire Engineering published a couple of years ago, my whole purpose was trying to fill voids. I mean, there's a lot of leadership books out there. And when I was working my way up through the ranks, I was scouring everything I could just to be better. I mean, leaders are readers, as the saying goes. I mean, I believe in that. Can't put a fire out with a book, but you know what? You can add to the fire, but you can also add to some skills. So just like with my promotional preparation book, I'm not here to be anybody but myself. So I took the time over the years to obviously capture a lot of my stuff. I mean, I had a lot of notes that I was taking over the years, lessons learned and everything else, things that I was using in some of my classes, some of my experiences, just some of those good little nuggets, for lack of a better term. And when it came time to putting this book together, when I sent the manuscript into Fire Engineering, the whole purpose of, well, I could do a basic leadership book that starts out of, leadership is, here's the definition of leadership, and there's many great books that are out there. I took it from a different viewpoint. I looked at it going, you know what? Yeah, I could do that, and I can maybe do that at some point, but I wanted to do the lessons learned, so to speak, the leadership lessons learned after getting the badge is sort of the phrase I used to use for a while. And I like courage under fire leadership. And I'll touch on why in a little bit, but I had a whole collection of items. So this book comes out to about 150 plus different tips. I broke them up into 6 separate areas. Personal leadership, meaning everything starts with us. We got to be a leader of one before we can lead anybody. Then personnel leadership, because we all deal with people, whether it's people those we supervise, people at the same rank, or maybe above our ranks. The third area is fire ground or emergency scene operations, as a company officer or above. Number 4 is firehouse leadership. Obviously, that's a big part of our job too as an officer. And then number 5 is administrative leadership, because good, bad, or indifferent, there's a lot of paper pushing and desk driving that goes with being an officer. And then I had some lessons learned from others when I asked some feedback. So I tried to sprinkle in basically a whole bunch of my different lessons learned along with some others. So back to the all ranks. If you're looking at this from a training aspect, what I like to offer is that whether you're a brand new firefighter or a future firefighter wanting to become a firefighter, no desire to be an officer, or maybe you want to be an officer, or maybe you're already an officer wanting to promote or just be better. My tips and suggestions within are really to help people raise their level of awareness. Meaning, for example, if you're a firefighter, you function at the task level. That's what a firefighter's job is, task level stuff. You become a company officer, tactical, become a chief officer, strategic, tactical, task. That's the way it is, nothing personal. Where I see a lot of problems in the fire service and any industry is that the lower levels as a firefighter, if you've never worked as an officer, you don't understand tactical or strategic level. And sometimes the decisions made by those above you can be maybe sometimes question of like, why did we not go into that burning building? And you may think your officer is maybe a weakling or whatever you want to call them, not aggressive. They're just a scaredy cat. No, I hope they're not. I hope they're aggressive, kick butt firefighter and fire officer. However, sometimes an officer, there is so much, as we all know, that are officers that go through our head. We do our size up, we practice, we process everything in a 30 seconds or less sometimes to make a go, no-go decision. And sometimes we have to take into account, obviously, health and safety, risk management, all these other many things that a firefighter may not care about. Because I was joking in class, how many firefighters care about risk management, or safety? And you know what? I don't expect any hands to raise. I didn't. But when you become an officer, you obviously think at a higher level. So again, your officer is not trying to take the fun away. So
you should. I don't want to cut you off, but you should think at a higher level, because you get those Peter principles where they were great firefighters and they think that they should be a boss because of how great of a firefighter they were. And then they don't think of those things, but yet they're riding the front seat. But continue. I'm sorry.
No, and that is so true. So from a training aspect, I look at the book as a multitude of different avenues, meaning if I'm that brand new firefighter that's just thinking about maybe being better or maybe promoting or not promoting, it gives me a bigger picture of what my officers should be thinking of. Doesn't mean they will. So at least maybe I won't question them again, or at least I'll because the whole saying of seek first, then to understand, you have to first understand what the other person is thinking. Because to me, a good officer is going to be explaining to their firefighters what their job is, what their responsibilities are, so they all understand each other's position on the organizational chart. And obviously for those that are in leadership positions, just a lot of little tips that really for me are not specific to me. They're not specific to Santa Clara County Fire or any organization I've served at. They're applicable anywhere around the country. So I think that's the benefit, is I try to keep it generic enough that my experience is, it's not me telling war stories. It's trying to provide examples of sometimes here's where I effed up and here's what I would have done differently. And I probably handled this wrong and I probably should have done this differently. So that was what the whole purpose is. And I think they all tie very well into training with all the different lessons learned and everything else.
I agree with a lot of that, and like that was the point in that question is like, it starts now, right? So don't, for the listener, for the person that, if you're not familiar or you didn't know about the book, I would encourage you to order a copy, right? But then two is see how you can use that, one, to help you build those next level leaders, use information that's in your book, right? But then two is then the person that is an aspiring up and comer, training yourself on some of these tips that are in there, to prepare yourself for when you're ready. That's the misconception is like, people think like leadership training is for leaders. Like, yeah, there should be, I guess, like on the job training for people that are currently in a leadership role so that they stay good at it and get better at it. But we're not training them before they become leaders. Like leadership training should certainly be given to people that aren't leaders yet. So this way they know how to do it and what they're getting themselves into,
Well, and that's what I tried to tie into things is that in many states, not all states, like in California, there's state certified officer classes. So and some departments actually say if you want to take the captain's test or lieutenant's test, you have to take these company officer, 40-hour classes or 30-hour classes on, strategy and tactics, command and control, HR related stuff, all the basic areas. And they're all good classes, but they're all stock standard curriculum based on textbooks. Again, good stuff, good knowledge. But the problem is that, and that's not always, every department's different, but again, it gives you a lot of good theory. I try to have some, experienced road rashes where I'm looking through some of these tips in here. I mean, I think anybody could relate to probably any one of these. And I think you hit the nail on the head is leaders create more followers, and a good leader at any rank recognizes that, okay, they're trying to make themselves better, but they're also trying to share nuggets with others. Now, it's hard to share hearsay information, but I bet anybody, like if I was, no matter where I'm at, looking through some of my tips in here, even though the situation I provide in there, or maybe the little nugget I take out of each one, like I talk about key points about mistakes or staying on top of what's going on in the fire service, learn to be a great follower, always attempt, lead by example. My hope is that to me, a good trainer, which everyone is a trainer at some point, especially officers, can maybe use these for their own situations and maybe think of things that, I had the same thing happen to me, because I think that to me is one of my best, well, not one of my best. I got promoted to captain and it was basically, here's the badge, kid, don't F it up. And that was the officer development. You pass the promotional exam. And I know most departments, we do an awesome job at training recruits, 500, 600, 700 hours of firefighter 1 and 2 training. Then it becomes 4 or 5 years later, you're a lieutenant or captain. Here's the badge, kid. And I get it. But that's where I think a lot of those things is recognizing that it's not just taking classes or reading books, it's finding those mentors, but also having the mentors share those. Because some of my best lessons learned were things shared with me going through the ranks from some of those other officers that walked before me. The valuable stuff. One, take a nugget from that person, do what they say, but don't do what they say. Good and bad.
Yeah, I always say that even a bad leader is a really good teacher because they teach you what not to do.
Yeah.
So talking about that, right? So the book discusses current leadership crisis in the fire service. So how can courage under fire leadership help up and coming leaders identify their strengths, their weaknesses, and then build a culture of accountability so that they establish that trust within the teams?
Well, and that's an interesting question because in a perfect world, we're all self-aware of what's going on.
Perfect world, yeah.
Well, I just used the term about 2 minutes ago, lead by example. Leading by example is a great concept, but not everybody is able to follow or take that example. And that's, some, and I'll use leading by example. Let's say, you're the company officer, you're all watching, football game. It's whatever, Monday Night Football, or not, that's a bad example. It's Sunday football. It's the last game of the day.
It's the Sugar Bowl where Notre Dame beat Chief David Rhodes' Georgia team. Yeah.
I didn't know the final score.
Let's say it's that. Notre Dame won, yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, we left it and we started this when the fourth quarter just started, so I didn't see the final score. So
I've been getting notifications. I wanted to text them, but I figured we're doing a show right now.
But
yeah, go on. We're watching the Notre Dame beat Georgia. Chief Oaks.
You can see the smoke coming out of his ears right now. But back to that strengths and weaknesses. The leading by example is a great thing when people follow, but I've seen times where, there's 4 or 5 people around the kitchen table or maybe around the recliners just chilling, whatever else. And then next thing you know, there's some noise out in the apparatus bay. And I remember this clearly as a brand new firefighter. I mean, as a rookie firefighter, you're taught to always be on the go, don't sit down. But, I'm studying, and all of a sudden I hear some noise in the apparatus bay. And I was like looking around and the captain's missing. And it's just, nothing else going on. Everybody else just, now I got hired before phones were a big thing. So this is, everyone's just pre-Google. But all of a sudden I'm like, who's making the noise? Are we, someone stealing some stuff out in the app bay, whatever else? But it's the captain. The captain's just starting to do some cleaning and everything else needed to happen. And then, of course, me as the rookie firefighter is like, hey, shit, Cap, here, I got that for you. I'll take it. He's like, no, here, you can help me with this, but we got to do this. Okay, no problem. I mean, it's, so I start helping him cleaning the tools, everything else, because it was that day that needed to get the, the tools and equipment cleaned and maintained and everything else. And I'm thinking to myself, we're out here making noise. He's making noise on purpose to see how many others miss him or whatever else. Thankfully, the rookie figured it out. But the other guys, it took a while for them to figure out. And then, of course, one guy comes out, oh, hey, guys, what's going on? And the captain's like, oh, just doing the weekly cleaning, hoping the guy would take the hint. Oh, okay. And then he goes, does whatever he does, never shows up. And I'm thinking, are you that freaking clueless that, but there's that thing of self-awareness. So leading by example, I mean, we can use all these terms, leading by example, but if someone doesn't have the self-awareness to recognize that they're part of the problem, but also part of the solution, I think that's the challenging part. It's like when we talk about dealing with people, whether you're a parent dealing with a kid or whether you're a supervisor having to have a conversation with somebody that works for you, for someone that may be deviated from the normal path. If someone gets the problem, life is very easy when they recognize immediately, fall on the sword that, hey, I screwed that one up big time. I own it. Let's move on. And you know what? Enough said. But unfortunately, some people still don't get what the issue was. You were driving 50 miles an hour through a 20-mile-an-hour school zone. The bus was flashing, the red lights. You're supposed to, well, we're going to a call. We got a call. We got babies to save. It's like, yeah, but there's kids. It's 2:00. School's letting out. What's the big friggin' deal? Fire department. Well, here's the thing. So that I think is the challenge. So as much as it's like a lot of times chiefs will ask me when they hire me, it's like, or consider to hire me, it's like, okay, what's the outcome going to be? Are we going to see a change in behavior? I go, here's the problem. I go, you can bring in whoever the top leadership expert is, which I'm not saying is myself, but you can pick whatever name out there that gets paid whatever amount of money. And you know what? To guarantee that everybody is going to get in line with best practices and whatever message is being sold, maybe there's a couple that get inspired or maybe motivated by that. But so I think that's the challenge is if someone is willing and able to actually pick up a book or whatever it is, pay attention to listening to somebody, hearing somebody, or just focusing on something, that's half the battle. Now, the next battle is whether or not they actually do something about it and recognize.
Retain it also.
Yeah. So I think there's the challenge there. I mean, in a perfect world, I think it's good. But if people if people think that if they think they're not the problem, we're probably never going to convince them. So people have to be willing to be able to be open-minded to improvement.
Right. That whole do as I say, not as I do adage.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. All right. So in continuing with the book, how can incorporating the lessons from your book, your new book, Courage Under Fire Leadership, enhance the effectiveness of firefighter training programs and prepare individuals for leadership roles? Now, I know we've been discussing a lot of this, but just from your perspective, from the author, what would be some of the things that you would have had a hidden goal of, like, this is what I would hope could be utilized or implemented into training programs from my book?
Well, let me start out where I came up with the term courage under fire leadership, because there's a lot of terms that are out there. I mean, there's many different terms, and many of them sound very similar. I was sitting through a program that was done by Chief Mike McNamee, District Chief, retired of Worcester, Massachusetts Fire Department. And he was doing his presentation about walking, he was the first in incident commander, first in arriving district chief, and he was telling all his actions and everything that went on. And I remember being very inspired by him as well. And I did a lot of extra reading on that too and everything else, because I look back and he made that tough decision to call it. I mean, I think he did the right thing by sending people in to look for people, because that's our job. I mean, we signed up for the fire department and there was potentially people inside. He made that tough choice, not tough to send people in. That's what we do. He made that tough choice, recognizing that I'm missing 6 right now.
Right, to stop anybody else from going in.
Yeah, I could have easily, and he could have easily lost. If you pay attention and read that stuff, he could have easily lost a lot more. It could have been a lot worse of a day.
Right.
I look back at myself when I was a battalion chief. I don't know if I could have made that tough call. I probably would have been succumbing to peer pressure, because we know peer pressure, groupthink is a big thing. And you got 12, 15 type A kick-ass firefighters that want to go up there and attempt to rescue, which that's the type of people I want to work with and serve my community where I live. But then, of course, the reason we have a supervisor and a boss and someone that's making the tough decisions, that's that person and he had to say, no, I'm going to cut it right here. And listening to him of how he almost got his, clock cleaned by them and everything else, and how he was ostracized by the group for a while. And, I hear all these things. I've always used the word courage because I think there's many words that tie into leadership when it comes to leadership traits, many good ones. But courage has always been one of those. And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, I don't know if I would have had the courage to say no. I probably would have, especially if I trusted you. I trust you, and and if you would come up and say, Steve, just give me Scott, just give me and Scott and Rick. If we can't get it, we'll call it. I mean, again, it's hard not to, but then that could have been even worse. So I coined that phrase specifically because I didn't see anybody else using it specifically. And I'm going, you know what? He had the courage under fire. Now, to me, sometimes it's just not going in after you've assessed everything, right or wrong. I mean, good, better, and different. That's the officer's job, make a split-second decision, and he at least had time. But sometimes the courage under fire is the opposite, meaning get yourself in there or say no, stop it, because it's not just fireground stuff. It could be firehouse stuff, or maybe you have to have the courage to be able to, hey, knock that stuff off. We ain't going there. So I think so using that as the baseline, I think how it ties into incorporating into training programs is so much of, I think, what we learn as human beings, especially in today's modern world, is through storytelling, through tying in real life events, not just fiction, taking that textbook knowledge into reality, because we ain't fighting fires like we used to. I mean, the quantity, the severity, we ain't seeing the significant incidents like we used to. Majority of our calls are routine. Don't get me wrong, and don't let our guard down, but routine calls handled by usually one engine or one truck. Very rarely are their first alarms or greater. So the people that we're hiring today, as much as we want to train them and give them all the basics, they need, I think, a lot more mentoring and a lot more guidance, stories, lessons learned to put, I hate to use the word slide tray, but put in their brain and hopefully have something in there when they get promoted to officer and maybe have to make that tough call, or maybe just the opposite, maybe have to find a creative way to teach someone a different topic or share a lesson learned like Worcester or Charleston or one of the other many tragedies. So I think there's a lot of ways that if you're creative enough as an individual responsible for training, you take some of these lessons learned and make them your own. I mean, the information's out there, which is nice with the internet, but learn from these lessons so we don't allow history to repeat themselves.
Amen. I love that you plugged Chief McNamee. That's a dude I would actually love to get on the show, because I've always been inspired by that story. I remember when that went down, and then I had bought the book 3,000 Degrees years ago when it had first come out. And it gave me just like a whole new perspective on that whole situation. And then as I promoted, same, like you said, like I feel like I would possibly succumb to the peer pressure, and I'm, and I'm a pretty hard ass guy, and like I stick to my convictions a lot. But it is when you're running a scene, like I mean, everybody wants to tell you how to run the scene, and you find yourself like, almost like, well, I like this guy, maybe I should agree with him. And in that situation, like, I don't know how I would have handled it. And I'm fortunate that I haven't had to deal with something like that so far in my career.
And the stimulus that's thrown at you in that heat of the battle, you got stimulus from individuals, but also what the fire's telling you and what everybody else. And that's why being that person that's the highest ranking person, especially on an emergency scene where it's easy for some people to say, well, they shouldn't have gone in at all. Well, no. I would have done the same thing. They go in because again, but on the other hand, there's also some times where you have to say the opposite. You look at Charleston, South Carolina. I mean, they've tragically lost 9 brothers. When you read that report, I remember reading that report going, that was a bad day for the fire service and obviously CFD. And that could have been a worse day but again, someone at one point recognized that, you know what, hey, we got to regroup. And that's why it's almost the loneliness of leadership sometimes, whether it's the emergency scene or whether it's just the firehouse, where maybe you have to be that tough person, or you as a fire chief and go against what the common theme is, or the brothers and sisters in the firehouse want this, but you have to make that tough call. Like, I'm sorry, I'd love to, but I got to do this, or we can't do that.
No, I don't disagree. It's shitty. You find yourself in these situations where you have to make an unpopular decision, and inevitably 10% of your organization, that's easy. I mean, that's a low bid. Like, inevitably 10% are going to be anti whatever decision you made, right? Inevitably. So it's like, and then in a situation like that, like he dealt with, in the moment, it's far greater than 50% are like, what? Nah, man, we're not going to stop doing what we're doing. Like, what are you, crazy? So I like that you tied that in with, your reason why you teach, that type of lecture, and you write about it, but then your recent book, because that is true. Like, it puts it in a good perspective, and like, that's the thing that's even tougher, like from a training perspective, like, how do we train that? How do we train courage? I don't think you can, and I'm not trying to be goofy when I say that. It's just like, I think maybe the lesson there, is obviously taking some of the nuggets from what you've put out and others that we're fortunate to know and teach with. But even a situation like that, like I use that situation. I have a slide, on that in my leadership class, and I've had it since 2015. I've never removed that slide. I call it controlling chaos. I said, what is leadership? It's controlling chaos. And then I show the picture of him, and I talk about, when he made the X, and, and that, I mean, that's the truth. Like, that's how you would train on something like that, is like, maybe we can go out and do, comms, and teach people how to talk on radio and do search drills and certain drills and hands-on stuff, and try to have people be crew bosses, and then do live fire stuff where you can teach people how to be a live fire instructor or lead instructor or whatever, and all that stuff. And those are all leadership things, but the mental piece, the psychosis, the psychological piece, that courage piece, how do we train that? And I think that's stuff that we do is just like, we continue to have people like yourself, put out this information, and then also tell people those stories. Like, I'm finding myself in a unique spot right now where I have a lot more young guys than I do senior guys. And I know it's typical in most organizations, but you would think I'm a young chief. Like, that's like, oh, well, young chief's going to, recruit a big young team. Like, it started to get away from us. So I just recently recruited a transfer who's a senior guy, he's been in the DOD for a long time, right. and he's from the area, so he's no spring chicken. He knows the area, he knows how we operate, he knows our company, right. And he knows the DOD very well. And people are like, dude, you're bringing him here. He's 50 years old. And I'm like, yeah, that was a fucking strategic move on my part. You know what I mean? Like, I need him here because you're 27 and that's the average age. And that's great. But like, who's the senior guy? Like, I don't have time to be the senior guy because I'm here young in my 40s and I'm the chief. So it's like, we need, I need somebody older than me to kick me in my ass. You know what I mean? Like, I need that and we need that. So, that is like, that's that piece of it is how we train on that is we have those stories passed on so that people can appreciate them. Because if you don't find yourself in that situation, God forbid, when you're introduced into that situation, it doesn't matter how much hands-on training we do or how many ICS classes you take or whatever, like, those are stories that we need to share with people. I like that you just used that example because it's a preparation thing. Like if I haven't painted some kind of scary picture for you of like, hey, this could happen. And like you said, there's times where this isn't the sexy, like go in and save the old lady or the baby courage. This is like the courage to make a hard decision.
Well, exactly.
I need to prepare you for that. How are you going to be, how do we do that? And that's kind of where I was just going with that,
No, I think, and that is so true. And I'm glad you're saying that because, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that those 12 to 15 Worcester firefighters that were basically trying to get past Chief McNamee, they had courage too. And that's what we need is, I talk about in class of, okay, I'm glad we have those type A personalities that want to go into harm's way to risk their lives for others, even if they die trying. That's awesome because that's what we sign up for. Because in today's fire service, I think we've almost gotten too safety. This is going to sound bad to some. Too safety and health conscious, which don't get me wrong, health is important.
Yeah, it's okay. I agree with you.
But in some areas around the country that I regularly travel to and teach and talk to firefighters, it's almost become too much where the aggressiveness is taken away. No, be aggressive. We took that oath of office to get our butts in that ideal H environment to risk our lives. Let's hope it doesn't happen, but not at the expense of the people that we're sworn to serve. So they took courage, but again, like you said, it also takes courage to be able to sometimes say, no, I got to make that hard decision. You can hate me for the rest of your life, but this is, and again, it could have been the wrong decision, but you never know that. But that's why we have people in those positions. And I think that's why I think you mentioned about stories. Okay. I was in the Chabot College Fire Academy back in 1992. So what is that? 33 years ago. I still remember things. We had an ex-Marine military style fire academy where you look up to live, meaning before you raise your ladder, look up to live. And if you don't, because you're looking for power lines, and if you don't look up to live before you raise your wood, not your wood ladder, we used aluminum and wood, but it was.
I was going to say, man, you're really dating yourself if they're putting up wooden ground ladders.
Actually, we were still using wood ladders because that was the mentality is if you can do wood, you can handle anything. When I got to fire with aluminum, those were easy, but way to
let everybody know that you are in fact an old person, but yeah,
I know. I resemble that. But the same thing was he had a saying that Captain Liffinchuck, God rest his soul, 25 will keep you alive, meaning 25 push-ups if you have a safety violation on the scene, or if you're late, give me 8. And I know some people are like, you can't be doing that. That's HR might not approve of that in today's modern fire service. However, take the eye rolls out of there. Those little things ingrained to me, like basically muscle memory items from 30 plus years ago to my head today, I still look up. I still, when I'm raised, not that I raise ladders all the time, but around the house if I'm doing something. But those are those lessons learned that certain people, not just captains, but some of them were firefighters, that just good firefighters looking out for other firefighters. Some of them were chiefs. Some of them were company officers. I can think of, not from everybody, but nuggets from different people that I considered mentors. Maybe I work with them. Maybe I just heard of them. Maybe I read about them. But those things, so I think there's the key is we're not getting the incidents or the emergency scenes. So we need to start planting those seeds, which is mentoring and sharing those lessons. And hopefully something sticks when someone's maybe in that situation. Like I tell people, I hope you're never in that situation to have to call call it, where you've already lost a number of firefighters. Nobody ever wants that. Nobody wants to lose civilians either, I would hope. But anyway, making that tough call. But if you do, hopefully maybe that 3 seconds that you have to think about this, you can think back to, okay, Chief McNamee did the right thing. It wasn't easy. He was ostracized, and for a while that was tough on him, I know, mentally, physically, because of people not maybe thinking he did the right thing, even though deep down inside, I mean, nobody around the kitchen table is going to come out and say, hey, the chief made the right call. I get it. Deep down inside, most people probably recognize, you know what, I get it. I would have done the same thing. But, you know, that brotherhood, and it's a crunchy line sometimes. And I think that's the whole goal. So.
Oh, I agree. All right. So finishing up with talking about training stuff. So, you stay very active with training, probably more active now since you've retired than when you were on a job, honestly.
Well, do that minus the politics and headaches.
Right.
And I had a great department. Don't get me wrong. Santa Clara County Fire is an awesome department, great leadership. I was blessed to be a part of there. And very low maintenance, very few personnel issues, but there's always politics, there's always bureaucracy, and that's the part I don't miss. So
I know. I envy you. I actually do envy you. I can't wait to not have to deal with that. So we got a lot of different things that we've grown as I guess we've evolved in the fire service, which is great, which we've always have, but just the way technology is today and the different things that we go toward, like we were just talking before, thoughts and prayers with what happened in New Orleans. And then, was an EV car used for that? Not that that changes anything, but then the EV pickup outside of the Trump building, Trump Plaza out in Vegas. So these are different challenges that we run into and stuff. So I would ask you, somebody who has been doing this a while, who has regularly stayed up to date with the evolution of our students, which are our firefighters, our recruits, our cadets, and then just globally, nationally, everything like that, right? How do you balance the need for maintaining core firefighting training with the incorporation of these new techniques and technologies into our training program? Because obviously it's important. So how would you recommend it if you have anything? And why is it important for us to couple the two?
Well, it's interesting because in the fire service, the old joke is the two things firefighters hate: change, and of course things stay in the status quo, staying the way they are. And it is interesting. Whereas, and I don't know it's an age thing per se, because I don't want to pick on ages, because I think everyone's different, but there's a lot of people in the fire service, traditionalists, that are anti-technology, everything. And then you get others that are like almost the full side of everything should be technology. And then, like I said, the other side doesn't want any technology at all. I mean, and I get both sides, but I also recognize in today's world, you can't do one or the other, because there's always going to be things that are going to be pushed upon us. It's like fire apparatus. In a perfect world, I don't want an engine with all this computerized stuff on it, because we know it's not if but when technology will fail. That's just fact of life. Not to say humans don't fail, but technology will fail or causes challenges. And we all know that with so much computerized stuff on, especially brand new apparatus, when something, the old school method was like, well, when the water stops flowing out of the nozzle, trace it back and then go back and, follow your blah, blah, blah. And, well, it ain't as easy. But the problem is we don't have control over apparatus manufacturing. I mean, obviously there's NFPA standards that apparatus manufacturers influence to be able to sell their apparatus. I get it, or build. So there's certain things we have no control over, meaning we can fight the technology, but we're going to have to deal with it. But we can't be so married. And I point to technology on my phone, because when we get so married to that, we've lost. I mean, one of our old retired fire chiefs used to always say, our job is to function in the absence of technology. But unfortunately, especially when you're growing up with technology, like you and I didn't grow up with technology. Technology came into our lives as we're getting older. But many people today, they've known nothing but technology.
Today's new fire, like I said, majority of my department. So those guys that are under 30, they never knew anything other than that. All this stuff was readily available to them. We didn't have Google. Google, I don't remember when it came out, but we didn't have it. Like you read to find information.
I think it was like mid-90s, give or take, when Al Gore created
Maybe, it didn't, when he invented the internet. I love you. Right.
Yeah, I was born before Google. I'm that old. But the whole point is I remember hearing about a crew that was paralyzed when obviously their whatever device they had, iPad or whatever the MBT was, and it went down. And it's like, okay, well, when I was hired as a firefighter, we didn't have technology. Not saying that's right or wrong, but you first learned your area. You had backup map books in the rigs. And I know they weren't always up to date, especially in growing areas, or out of date the minute they're printed. And then the technology came around, but I think a lot of people get so wound up in the technology, they forget the basics. And that's where I think sometimes we can do a better job as teaching the basics, going, when that MDT shuts down or gets too hot because it's out there in the 100-degree summer heat, hopefully you got your backup. Well, you got map, but do you even know how to read it? And again, I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not being condescending, but going back to the basics, it's like when I took over the Chabot College fire program about 20 some years ago, I just had a lot of questions because I went through the academy and then now I'm managing everything. And that old Captain Livenchuk, the old Marine drill instructor, I'm like, Mike, why are we teaching, wood ladders and I'm not questioning what he does. He knew his job better than I did, but I'm just asking questions about why wood? Why aren't we using aluminum? Wouldn't aluminum be cheaper, less maintenance? I go, why are we not showing the Hurst, the power spreaders? We're teaching him how to cut holes with axes in the roof. And Mike had a great answer. He goes, well, first of all, we're a college budget. He goes, we can't afford all the latest, greatest fancy power tools. He goes, we get hand-me-downs. We will use them. But he goes, what happens when those power tools fail? They will. And you're up on that roof and that chainsaw can't start. You better be able to know how to cut a roof with a pickhead axe or a flathead axe or whatever you have. And that was what we instilled in people. And he also said, if you can handle a wood ladder, you can handle anything, because some departments use wood, some use aluminum. So always having a backup plan, I think, is critical, but it always goes back to the basics of what did you do before technology if you have control over it? And now we don't have control over it. And there's things like you mentioned, electric vehicles. Okay, well, whether you like them or not, they're here to stay. I mean, I don't know what the future is going to be, but they're out there. And whether it's dealing with maybe in this case, an explosion or a fire, or just maybe, whatever situation you may encounter, it isn't the old days where it was pretty easy because you had the old tanks that we were taught how to cut doors on tanks and everything else. But now these newer cars, not even EVs, have different technology. And so I think the whole part about technology is we can't be left behind as an industry, but we also can't get so far ahead, because I used to love it when people would suggest, hey, we got to get this latest, greatest technology, whatever it is, whatever came out, XYZ company, and there's these new ones. And then, of course, okay, that's great. But there's a lot of things to think about. Okay, it's great technology, but is it proven yet? Will it be around in 5 years? What's the maintenance cost? What happens when it's no longer supported? The company goes out of business, gets bought out, or there's a better one. And again, there's not saying don't go technology, because I think it's beneficial to provide a better service, maybe get there faster, more efficient, have more resources at our fingertips. But there's also a lot of thought that goes into it to make sure you're not just throwing money into a money pit and causing more work for people. Because our IT staff used to always love saying, oh, who agreed to, whatever, add more iPads to the rigs? What do you mean? Well, we already had one, we needed a second one. Well, that's more work for IT because they got to install and maintain them. And now we got to add time to their staffing, which is not a problem. But all those little things, I think, again, task, tactical, strategic, we need to do a better job as chiefs, especially teaching, empowering firefighters. It's great to come up with great ideas, because some of the best ideas come from the lowest ranks. Trust me, not the upper ranks. Don't take it personal, chiefs, but also helping them understand that, okay, it's not as easy as just, hey, we got a grant for this, let's just do it. Well, and helping them walk through it. And maybe it's not the best time, or maybe it is, because people get wowed by, this is awesome, let's just do this. And then it's like, wait a second, what do you mean I got to we didn't budget for it? Or what do you mean we got to replace them every 3 years? What do we got? $100 subscription per unit times 50 units, and we didn't budget for that. Now we got to shut a firehouse down. No, it don't work that way.
No, I'm very inclined to agree with you. I think one of the challenges that I found was when I joined the fire service, we were still very traditional. We were not reliant on technology. So for me, it was a challenge to discipline myself on how to utilize them. But it was nice because I had a frame of reference to not become overly reliant on them. So it's like in anything with the fire service, like if it's a tool that works, I'll use it. But that doesn't mean I'm going to discard another tool. It's just another one that works, there's times where there's I need a halogen bar, and then there's times where I don't, that's a piece of technology. I mean, technically speaking, that will never be replaced. And many have tried. Many have come up with all types of different pro bars and tools, and well, this one can do that and this, but people still have a halogen bar in their rig. Everyone has one, and everyone has used one at least once. Even the latest, greatest, newest firefighter has used that halogen bar even once because it works, right? It was ahead of its time when halogen created that. And that's the thing is like, we just need to realize that like your training can't just encompass new technologies and those type of resources. They need to teach everybody the balance between all of them. So with that said, I'm not knocking the people that brought us up, our predecessors or anything like that. It's actually more of a challenge now for training officers and fire instructors than it was when we were coming up, because they have to find that bridge, which means that they have to learn two things 100%, and not sit there and be a new instructor and talk shit about traditions, or be an older instructor and talk shit about the contemporary future stuff. They can't, because you're going to bastardize the future fire service. These people that are coming up, they need to know why we used this and why it works. But now you have this thing, and man, wouldn't that have been cool? Like pumps, I don't drive anymore because of my position, right? But when I was coming up, we had 2-stage pumps. Everything was mechanical. It was a 2-hand operation. You were gating back and throttling down as you opened up. Either you hooked up to a hydrant or you opened a second line. Now it does it for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, it literally has a computer where it's just like I'm like watching the guys, like training the guys, and I'm like, yeah, you got to gate back, and they're like, nah, I don't, man. Watch, and it's like, watch. I'm like, man, I wish I had that. Like, I didn't have that shit.
But then what happens when it fails? And again, I'm not leadership.
Right. That's why you teach them how to use both.
Right. And a lot of people are quick to bash certain generations. But to me, leadership is about all generations playing together nicely in the sandbox, but also understanding each other, because there's definitely tradition is important. And there are a lot of great traditional things, like you mentioned, the halogen tool, the pick head axe, the flathead axe. They're there for a reason as the basics. They should never go away. And there's also sometimes a need for progression, so you're not left in the dark when it comes to whatever you're doing. I mean, if there's a better, faster, more efficient way to do something, why would we not do it? But again, what happens when that technology is malfunctioning? Okay, no problem. I go to plan B because I know how to, cut a hole with an axe. It sucks. It's going to be a hell of a lot more work to cut that hole, but you know what? Chainsaw ain't starting.
Right. No, I agree. I do. I think that's something that's just another perfect example, for those people that are either aspiring to teach or teaching, just on that. Just that's one example that resonates very well, both literally and metaphorically, is ventilation. Teach the guys how to use saws, but also teach them how to use the axe, because there's a time where they may have to use that axe because the saw didn't work, or the saw shit the bed on them, or it's a slate roof. I mean, I've had that. Like, I talk about that all the time because I actually encountered it. Not everybody has that luxury of encountering a slate roof. Right. You ain't using a saw on a slate roof. I mean, you can after you get all that slate off of the thing, and that's stuff that's why we train on that. That's why you still use this old piece of technology, because you run into that shit, But yeah. So we'll finish up. Now you've done the show before, but I it's okay if it's changed, because things have changed since, I mean, that was it. That was a while ago when we did that. It was years ago when I had you on. But it was when we were still doing it on the phone, it was like there was no video. It wasn't a big production like fire engineering has now.
Okay. Better to see your face. As much as I enjoy texting and talking to you in person, nice to see you this way too.
Evolution. So, here it is. This is,
tradition is important, but sometimes progression too.
Right. I have a face for radio, so I don't like it, but yeah.
The Jersey face for radio.
Right. Yeah. No, but so the last thing that I always ask my guests is, in all that you do, all that you've accomplished, all that you've strived for, what type of legacy would you like to leave behind? And I mean that in a humility sense. It's not an arrogance thing. It's just like I say, to put it in a terminology of training. Everything has objectives. So we do things with a purpose. What would that purpose be? What would you like to see the outcome be? So I ask you, what type of legacy would you like to leave behind?
And again, not trying to sound patting myself on the back, because it's not. I touched on this a little bit earlier. My purpose that I always share with people, one of my vision is to, like I mentioned, helping people get hired, stay hired, get promoted, stay promoted, but also have a nice, long, healthy life in retirement, but also be able to know you left things better than you found them. I think of all the things I've been fortunate to have an opportunity to be involved with, which I've been very blessed and fortunate in my career, and hopefully it continues that way, is at least what I've been told by others, the impact from some others, things that have helped people. Like when I was coordinating the Chabot Fire Program 20 some years ago, websites were just websites were just coming around, and the college didn't have a website because, again, they had just been started. And I created a website that to this day I still manage free of charge for the college, and because I enjoy it. But I also post a lot of free stuff on there to help people become firefighters. And then as I started teaching my leadership stuff and promotional preparation stuff, my own personal website, which is code3firetraining.com, I have a free stuff link with a whole ton of promotional preparation, as well as entry-level stuff on the college one, which is chabotfire.com. But every now and then, and I don't do it for this reason, but every now and then someone will maybe send me an email or a text or just a call. I don't know you. You don't know me. We've never met, but I happen to come across your promotional preparation stuff on your website, or I read your book or whatever else, and you help me. Or someone in person. Last year I had someone in Texas. Guy goes, you don't know me. We've never met. He goes, but I've been following your stuff, that your articles in fire engineering and your stuff you post on the website for probably the last 20 some years. He goes, I met you as a firefighter, not in person, but he goes, I met you, I liked your message. He goes, along with other people's stuff, not just me, but he goes, you helped me get promoted to captain. You helped me promoted to battalion chief, never even coached him or worked with him, and he goes, now I just got my deputy chief's badge just based on the tips and the nugget suggestions you have on your website. The articles that you've written for, fire engineering and so forth. And, and then he tied in my last book, 201 Tips to Ace Your Promotional Exam. He goes, just those little things. He goes, I'm glad I get to meet you in person and just say thank you for that impact. And again, it doesn't happen every day, but those are things that go, because it make my day, because there's times I wonder, is it worth the time and the effort to, because, writing articles, especially writing books, speaking, you got time and effort, so much more time and effort than the actual 1 hour presentation or whatever else. And there's times it's like, is it worth it? Is anybody benefiting from it? And then it's those things like that go, you know what? Okay. Or when I see someone that goes, hey, chief, you were my EMT instructor 20 years ago, and I just got promoted to fire chief now. And I'm like, okay, now I'm feeling old here. And he's like, hey, thanks for the tips and the suggestions. I still remember those things as an intro to fire class or EMT. So that, I hope, is the legacy that, again, I don't need to meet everybody and be nice to, but again, it's just about planting those seeds that hopefully people, like I tell those same people, hopefully now you're doing the same thing for others, and they go, well, I shared your website with that. No, I appreciate that, but you do the same to others and pay it forward, pass it on. So that's what I'm hoping, in a long answer, drawn longer, but good question. But no, and again, as long as I'm alive, hopefully, and people are willing to listen, hopefully I can benefit others in whatever ability I can benefit them.
No, I agree, and I love it. I find myself there a lot of times. I enjoy doing it. You know that we've had very many intimate conversations about purpose and why we do what we do. And yeah, it is. I mean, it's not a narcissistic thing. It's just, I mean, as an instructor, your end goal is to make sure that some of the students, if not all, walk away with something, that they learned something, that there was meaning behind what you did. So I share that same thing with you. Like, you know, when I write something, I wrote it for me because it was something that was on my mind at the time, but I also just hope that it's helped somebody. Somebody took something from it. You know, I'm not alone in my problems. Because at the end of the day, like, when we put ourselves out there, it's a vulnerable spot. People don't realize that. You know, you get these fly-by-night wannabe celebrities, and they don't realize, like, first of all, it's very time-consuming. We've talked about that.
Oh, yeah.
Very time-consuming, especially when you're still active on the job. It's very time-consuming. You know, and then like me, like you heard, you know, the Mick screaming in the background there, I'm sure, because he was loud as shit. You know, so you're home. Yeah. You know, you're home, and you know, you got kids just in the other room, you know, yelling, and you put yourself out there for, you know, those you know, hitting it hard from the yard sites and everything to pick on you, you know, or bring question your you know, your integrity or your credibility or whatever, you know, and it's not easy. So no, I think that's an awesome legacy to want to have. I share in that, is like, you know, sometimes we're just trying to share something that we have to make it a little easier for somebody else, because it was harder for us in different times, you know. So I like that. I think it was great.
And I'm fortunate that I had, when I was going through Chabot's fire program as a student, brand new first semester, learning about the trade before I got hired. Again, it ties back to those instructors that inspired me, that basically encouraged me to continue doing the same thing at the college now as well as elsewhere. Because I think, and if everyone just did their small little part or big part, whatever part you want to do, to just give back, pay it forward, help mentor others, it'd be amazing how successful we could be, versus just, unfortunately, some people like, hey, not my job. You know, I'm just a whatever. Well, no, you're not just whatever. You're, you know, because we all know those people that we had that sometimes maybe blew us off or wouldn't give us the time of day, and that's fine. But it's like those that did give us the time of day, I mean, those are those people, I think.
Yeah, you remember them forever. You know, case in point, and I look at you, you know, like I always share that with you, you know. We got to play the game, but you know who your real friends are, and who was meaningful and had an impact on what you're doing, you know, and you're one of them. You know that. I've shared that both intimately and publicly. I have no shame in sharing that publicly, other than to make you awkward and squirm. But no, it's the truth, you know. Like I say to you and Frank Ritchie, you know, just to name the two most, is I very much am a firm believer in the true meaning of mentorship, and you guys are exactly what I feel the definition is, you know, and that's what's important. So no, I'm with you. I appreciate it. I'm not going to hold you. I know you got stuff to do with Bonnie, so we'll wrap up. But thank you, brother. I'm going to see you next month. Oh, forgive us, FE, but half of our instructors are teaching down there anyway. So, you know, and I think Rhodes might even be there. So we're just going to plug it. But obviously, register and sign up to go to FDIC. Yep. When are you teaching at FDIC?
I'm doing Courage Under Fire Leadership, a classroom session Friday morning. Friday morning is, I can't remember. It's either the 8:30 slot or the 10 whatever slot. One of those two slots.
Okay.
Morning. Yeah, all the classes end usually right around lunchtime, and it's expo calls. Friday morning. I hope to see you out there. Anybody? I mean, I know I'll see you out all the whole week there, but I hope to see anybody else out there. And my class, obviously, for any rank of people, whatever size of department, it doesn't matter. But if you just have a passion for maybe being better, to be better, for taking care of them, as we say, hopefully I can give you at least one good nugget to take away.
Right. It's a great class, trust me. So yeah, register, sign up for FDIC, go to Steve's class Friday morning. And then also next month, Steve and I are going to be down in Columbia, Missouri for the MU Winter Fire School. You know, if you don't have to be from Missouri, you know, sign up, register. It's a nice, nice conference. We always have a good time out there. So if you're looking for some good training, sign up for that too. That'll be the weekend of the Super Bowl. I think it's like the 7th and 8th or something like that, or 8th and 9th of February.
Saturday the 8th and Sunday the 9th. Basically, it's just all day Saturday and half day Sunday. So it gets you off in time to go watch the Super Bowl if that's what your desire is.
But yeah, come on out, and hopefully we see you there. If not, definitely hopefully we see you in FDIC.
Yeah.
So Priz, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. All my love to you and Bonnie, and have a happy, safe New Year. And I'll see you soon. And everybody else, thank you. This is Dave McGlynn, Fire Engineering Podcast Training Officer. You guys be safe.
Firefighters know that every second counts during the golden hour. That is why first responders trust AMKUS for simple, rugged, reliable